Allegiance? Thank you, sir.
All rise and begin with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to move into item number 1.3, which is the March employee anniversaries. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our general manager.
Well, we only have one, and it is Steve Shepard, who has been with us for quite some time, and I believe is the third longest employee at this time. I believe two others have him beat, but Steve Shepard is currently our development services supervisor, but he started out in the collection system. So he has quite a bit of knowledge in that area, as well as development services, and he's lived in the area all his life. So we rely on him a great deal for both historical knowledge and current knowledge, as well as his activities in CWA Corb's group. So he is just an all-around bank of knowledge that we rely on. So I'm so pleased that he is with us and has been with us for 25 years.
And Steve's not on Zoom with us today, is he?
I do not believe so.
No, he is not.
Okay. No, you know, Steve is every time. I mean, Steve, I love that guy. He's amazing. And you're right with the knowledge, and you can just see the passion that he has working with us. It's truly a blessing to have him for 25 years and tell him 25 more. And with that, I'm going to pass it around to our directors. We like acknowledging our employees. It's a blessing, something we get to do, and I think we all really enjoy it. So I'll go to directors online. I'll start with our Vice President, Dennis Coleman.
It's just a pleasure to have Steve here with us. He's done such a great job in terms of permitting and all the rest of the stuff, for the knowledge and the way he interacts with developers. Just pass along our thanks to him.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer Canero.
Steve has built his way up through the ranks and being supervisor. He's a true leader, very soft-spoken, but gets the job done. And I also know that Steve has reached out and joined other organizations and has become involved in other organizations, which is a great blend for us. So he is to be commended for all his service and dedication to Valley Sanitary.
Agreed. Director Duran.
Well, everything's been said. It's been a wonderful employee, 25 years, a long time. My congratulations to him and his longevity, and just maintain and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Director Teague.
Well, I've known him for a while. I went to high school with his mother and father. So I've only known him for a little while. He, as everybody has indicated, just an outstanding man. The thing that he's done for this district, and did it, as Debbie had indicated, with a very soft voice, but carried a very large stick. And he has the respect of everyone with whom he's ever worked and with whom he's ever tried to work with. And so he's a great young man, and I just think the world of him. That's it.
That's awesome. No, Beverly, please, relay those messages on to Steve, and we really appreciate all his hard work. Okay, I'm gonna move on to item number 2, which is the public comment items. Holly, do we have anyone online with us that'd like to address the board?
We do not have anyone online for public comment. However, we do have Greg Klumpner from NBS here, who he will be presenting at a later item.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome, Greg. Holly, keep me posted on that just in case I don't want to run over it. And we have no one in our boardroom at this time, so we'll move on from public comments. We're going to go to item number 3, which is the consent calendar. And please let me know if you'd like to pull anything. Consent calendar is going to include item number 3.1, approve February 23rd regular meeting minutes. 3.2, approve warrants for February 18th to February 28th. And 3.3, designate, identify items as surplus items and authorize descriptions as appropriate. Now, since we're all split up, we'll keep to the plan, and I'll address every board member to see if they want to bring up anything. And we'll start with Director Duran.
No, nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Treasurer Canero.
No, I have nothing.
Thank you, ma'am. Vice President Coleman.
No,
Thank you, sir. And Director Teague.
No, and I would move approval of the consent item.
I have motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm gonna call
put all three of us.
Director Duran.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have a motion and second. Holly, roll call, please.
Director Teague,
Yes.
Director Duran,
Aye.
Vice President Coleman,
yes,
Secretary Canero,
Aye.
and President Sear.
Yes, ma'am. All right, motion passes. All right, we're going to move on to non-hiring items. We're going to start with item number 4.1, discuss proposed 5-year sewer use rate and direct staff to prepare for mail the Proposition 218 notice. And with that, I'm going to pass it to our general manager.
So as you're aware, we have been working on this starting in about December. And we've had a couple of different iterations of this that the board has seen, as well as the Budget and Finance Committee. And we have worked very closely with the committee and with the consultants. Jeanette has been the primary on this. But at this time, I think it would be beneficial to turn it over to Greg Klumpner from NBS for him to do the presentation. And then we can bring it back to the board to ask questions and staff to provide input.
Thank you. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you.
And Greg, would you like to drive this presentation? I can make you host.
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Okay, let me stop sharing.
I cannot share. Well,
Yeah, you'll be able to, just a second. All right, you should have the capability now.
okay. Let's see, that would be this one. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we went over this last time. There's been some changes based on comments on rate design and so forth. Do you want me to go through this kind of slide by slide, or, there's a lot of basics in here that maybe we don't need to go into too much detail.
You know what? Oh, go ahead, Beverly.
Yeah, I was just going to say it'd probably be beneficial, just a real high level of this part, and then go, since we did already talk about it, and then go to the assumptions and scenarios.
Yeah. So here's an overview of the presentation. We basically walked through the different parts of the study, the financial plan, the cost service, the rate design, and so forth. We do have bill comparisons and a look at the alternatives we talked about last time. A lot of this stuff is details that go into the financial plan, which for anybody who's following this, they can read the details about these assumptions about issuing 165 million of debt, issuance costs for the SRF loans, and so forth. So the capital improvement program, about 260 million, split up in these three or four annual segments. O&M costs, 8.1 million. And that's increasing over the time. Your debt service is going to be going up a lot once you issue all that debt. So close to 8 million once it's all issued. This is kind of a typical look at capital improvement programs. And this usually means that once you get to that point where the bars really drop off, it's basically because you haven't done the planning. There are going to be projects out there that you just don't know what they are yet. Maybe that's different with you guys, but usually when I see this, it means that your plan goes up to about that 6 or 7 years out there, and then there's new stuff that's not in the plan yet. So the funding, here's your O&M expenses and the revenue under the existing rates. Obviously, that's going to change over time. So at some point, you would need to increase the existing rate revenue. Details of the financial plan. This is what we've gone over in the past, and under the debt service level, you can see where the total debt service. So you've got about 1.4, 1.5 million in existing debt, and then as you issue the new SRF loans, that gets up to the 8.6 million a couple years out. So I just want to make one comment about the financial plan reserves. The way it's set up now, you're actually funding most of your capital improvement costs through the reserves. If we go back to here, often we'll put a line in somewhere around the operating expenses, debt service. So the rate funded capital expenses here is actually occurring in your reserve funds. So you've got 10 or 12 million that is being funded in your biggest years. This is kind of I talked with Alice about maybe putting this up here. I don't know if you guys have a preference, but we just need to recognize that this line called rate funded capital expenses is actually being funded through the reserve. So you have a big surplus, which, down at the bottom there, you see the surplus after the rate increases. That essentially is funding the pay-as-you-go capital improvements. So I wanted to, Alice didn't have time to change this chart, but I did want to show the expenditures in these reserves for those capital improvements. So anyway, that's what's happening. The big expenditures is actually happening through the capital improvements. So here's the summary of the financial plan, the revenue requirements, and usually when you have this gap between the top of the bars and the revenues under the proposed adjusted rates, that means you're contributing to reserves, but that's actually being spent on the capital improvements. So here's, once you start spending that money down out of the reserves, here's what your reserve fund, this is pretty much how this should look. You can maybe taper back your rate increases in these later years out, but as I also commented, that's usually when additional capital projects are showing up. So you're probably going to need that reserve there, that additional revenue. Okay, for the cost service analysis, just real quickly, there's these basic components of the cost service analysis. You essentially allocate costs out to flow, strength, and customer related costs. And those typically result in allocations to each customer class. And the details on the class, this has been one of the bigger issues that the district has been dealing with in terms of data. Having good data on number of EDUs by customer class, and for commercial customers, there was that new designation of low, medium strength, and then a second category of high strength. So I don't know if you need to discuss any of these definitions of the customer classes, but there has been a fair amount of attention looking at what's in them and how we measure this. The data probably is not perfect. There's still some room for improvement, but I think this is a pretty big step forward. So a big improvement. We're still looking for perfection, but probably not going to get there this time. So as I mentioned, the non-residential customer classes, we have the 2 commercial categories, low, medium, and then high strength. Here's how the cost service analysis came out in terms of allocating these different customer allocation factors by customer class. This is all kind of the technical background of what goes into the rates. And here's how it breaks out in terms of the 13.6 million that is the revenue collected through rates. So we see the designations by each customer class. And then the third part of the rate study, they have the financial plan, the cost service analysis, and then the rate design. Here's where we get into what is usually the biggest interest and the most discussion in terms of how do you collect the rates from the customers. You know, obviously we're going to see some differences because the data is so different by customer class for EDUs and number of accounts and so forth. Some are going to go up and some are going to go down, and that's kind of the nature of the cost service analysis. Particularly when we have everybody on a 100% fixed charge and a number of EDUs by customer class, which probably haven't been verified in quite a while. So, you know, the result is that there is some truing up of the costs. And obviously, the better the data, the better, the more accurate the differences in the current versus the proposed costs would be. So here's a look at single-family residential. So the 3 rate alternatives here is to continue with a fixed cost, 100% fixed, and then the alternatives 2 and 3 are 80-20, fixed volumetric, and 70-30. These are what we discussed in the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. And they seem like they're a kind of a good hybrid of where we think you want to be. The more fixed you have, obviously, the more revenue stability. As we discussed last time, the vast majority of the costs really are fixed. So having a fairly high percentage number in the fixed portion makes sense. But you know, obviously there's differences in the impacts on customers within each customer class, depending on the rate design. So that's what you're seeing here. And we've put the red boxes around the average winter, average annual, and then the average summer consumption, just so you can see what that looks like. So average winter water use for single family, multifamily, mobile homes, it is based on winter consumption to take out the landscaping portions. Let's see. So alternatives 2 and 3 are they do bring in that component of the volumetric, which changes the bills. Annual consumption for RVs and non-residential customers. And there's the strength factor that goes into these, particularly the commercial also. Current proposed rates. So your rate schedules, as you can see, the current rates, everybody got the $330 per EDU fixed. And so that's now changing quite a bit, depending on based on the data that we have for each of these customer classes, and near as we can tell what are true equivalent dwelling units. Some case there are accounts versus EDUs, but you can see the differences here from the current. So the alternatives 2 and 3, you know, they have the volumetric component, which throws in the volumetric charges that you see down at the bottom here. And these 2 alternatives really give you kind of a choice of, if you want to go a little bit more fixed or a little bit more variable, based on past discussions, either of these is pretty well tied to the cost of service. Any comments by anybody? Questions? No? Okay. So here's the alternative 3. So obviously the volumetric charge is slightly higher and the fixed charge is a little bit lower. And this is probably the part that most people are going to want to take a look at. Customer bill impacts. I'm not sure where we had the residential there earlier, but here it is again. So this shows you the difference, between those that consume less and those that consume more. Obviously, residential is going up quite a bit, just based on truing up of the data. The multifamily, assuming our data is correct, multifamily typically on a kind of a per EDU basis, they're generally about 70% of a single family residential home. And I think some of that is getting reflected in these rates. So obviously those are coming down. The only one that's even close to the existing rate is the higher consumption level for alternative 3. And this is just kind of what happens in these true-up cost service analyses. Mobile homes, also lower in general. And then the volumetric component does make some difference, not as much. And then the same for RV parks. And the low, medium strength. So this really emphasizes the difference in the volumetric charge. And these customers typically they have a wide range of people from really low consumption to really high. So that the equity, I think, is being trued up here in terms of people that use generate a lot more effluent, and particularly when you get into the high strength, their bills are just going to be higher. And this is kind of a key component of the fairness and equity that Prop 218 requires that you demonstrate. So here's the high strength customers. At $330 fixed, you can see that that's just way different than under these new proposed rates. But as I mentioned, the equity and fairness really is a key component, and it's kind of hard to justify this $330 across the board for every, low consumption, low strength, high strength, and so forth. It just didn't make a lot of sense. So this is much more true to the cost of service that Prop 218 is intended to establish. So we can do questions at the end, but the Prop 218 process, I think you're fairly familiar with that. You direct staff to send out the Prop 218 notices if that's your choice. Those get mailed to all customers and property owners. 45-day period to submit their protest ballots. Those are collected and counted at a public hearing sometime after the 45 days. And assuming there's no 50% plus one.
Was small, that we come here for that couple days, right? Small stuff. Yeah.
I'm sorry, somebody.
Oh,
I can't hear that question.
take care of it. Take it.
That's just someone that walked inside.
Oh.
So he's not part of the meeting.
Okay. All right.
Apologize for that.
No problem. Yeah, so at that public hearing at the end of the 45-day period, if there's no successful challenge and you choose to move ahead with adopting these rates, you're free to do so at that time. So obviously the next steps are going to be you're going to think about the rate study and whether you need other changes in the rate alternatives, the rate structure alternatives, or any of the other costs, then you're going to go through the Prop 218 balloting process, and then take action on the new rates if that's what you choose to do. So here's the general timeline. I don't think this has changed much from the beginning, but yeah, your public hearing would be mid-June, and then finalizing everything, putting on the tax rolls would be by prior to mid-August. And with that, I'm sure somebody has some questions they want to talk about.
Yeah, let's go over to the directors. But before I pass it over to the directors, I'll see if our general manager wants to add anything to that. Beverly, anything you'd like to add?
Actually, yes. So thank you very much. Before the board gets into its questions and debate, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in, having worked at agencies that do all sorts of variations of these. I've worked at agencies that had a flat rate where it was by EDU. I've worked, even though it was different classes, it was a flat rate, like option one, alternative one. I've worked at agencies that had a volumetric only. I can tell you that there are pros and cons to both of those. And in my professional opinion, the combined fixed and volumetric is the best way to achieve covering those fixed costs while still being fair and sensitive to the users. Because one of the complaints you hear often is, okay, I'm you know, I may live in a single family home, but it's just me and my husband, or it's just me and 1 or 2 children. And, you know, how can you compare that to someone who has 2 generations living in the same household and far more people? So that's where the volumetric can really benefit and even that playing field, while still addressing that the majority of our costs are fixed. We have pipe in the road, we have a treatment plant, and whether there's a gallon that flows in here or 1 million gallons that flows in here, we still have to be up and running. So those are the fixed costs. The volumetric gets to people that are really good at conserving, or if they're a smaller household compared to a larger household. So I really think that the one of the 2 alternative 2 or 3 is the best way to work with both the letter of and the intent of the Prop 218, which is to make it fair to everyone, while still making sure that we cover the costs of what we do. So I just wanted to put that out there, and then the board can ask questions.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm going to pass it to the board members that are on the Zoom with us right now. And I'm going to start with Director Duran.
I have no questions at the present time, but I am going to have some now that I have the discussion, that I've heard the discussion. Was there the actual these were all the options that we got, or was there some more options that came back from the consultant?
We actually, based on the feedback we received at the last board meeting, helped and requested that the consultants narrow down their focus, because we heard very clearly that the board was interested in trying to keep the rates low, smoothing it out over 30 years if at all possible, and financing as much of the projects as we could so that we could smooth out those costs. And looking at the alternatives, we certainly discussed with the committee having like a 50-50 fixed volumetric, but that really is not a valid option because our fixed costs are much closer to the 70 or 80%. So we asked them to narrow the presentation to these three alternatives based on that feedback.
Okay, thank you. But these are the options that we have right now are the options that are going to go out to the stakeholders.
Well, no, the board is going to need to pick one of these options and direct staff to prepare the notice based on one option.
So if I
Okay,
may
yeah.
clarify, Director Duran, it would be on slide 23, 24, and 25, which is alternative 1, 2, and 3, which would be either the 100% based on EDU, the 80-20 split, which is what staff is recommending, and the alternative 3, which would be the 70-30% fix.
I'm aware of that. I just wanted to see if that was the only options that actually were presented by the consultant. I know our conversation, and we didn't want to go into some of the other ones that were actually brought forth before the last meeting. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Secretary Treasurer Canaro.
You're muted. Secretary.
Muted, Secretary.
On the multifamily residential, how do we know the difference between a single and a multifamily? How is that figured out?
As far as what type of facility they are or unit they are, that's actually identified by the county. We can see how they're categorized, whether they're a single family or a multifamily parcel.
Okay.
That's on page 37, Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah. So for example, a duplex or an apartment complex, those would be multifamily.
Okay. Okay.
Not the same as mobile home or RV park. Those are separate. So you would be looking at something where there is more than one connection, but it's on the same parcel.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then Secretary Treasurer, I said 37. I'm sorry. It's more in like the 30s areas where you can find the breakdown of page 31, where you can find the breakdown of what is what.
Okay.
All right, we're going to pass on to Vice President Coleman.
Thank you. So to begin with, basically, these are the changes that have come up as they've been screened through the Budget and Finance Committee. However, just going back over it, these scenarios now show us only issuing 165 million worth of debt versus 185. And I believe that was one of the cost drivers. I did notice that our total CIP for the 12 years or so, whatever, has come down slightly. I think we had 267 before, and it's about 259, if I'm correct. And this also had a little bit more from the first time the board saw it for adjustments for our parity debt issuance at 125 and reserves, if I'm looking at this. And so one of the things that I see in this thing, and by the way, I'd like to make a suggestion that in the final presentation or technical memo, we do put back the CIP schedule that we had before, because here we only show it graphically in terms of the slides on the capital improvement, which do show the numbers, but not the detail like it did in the original technical memo, which actually broke down the projects, came up with the same totals through the first 5 or so years, but at least it gives the detail as to our spending from 25 million, 26, 33, 40, 39, and 37 million, because that's a very important detail that I think that our ratepayers need to see in terms of why we're doing this. One of the key factors that I see with this is it gets us to our needed 125. I think that's one of the lower in like the fourth year, we actually hit it with this. In terms of 24, 25, we're right at 125. The rates that we're looking at with this new scenario are 12.5 through 4 years, and then it drops to 2. But even with the 2%, we're at 1.28 for our debt service coverage. So we've loaded up, we've issued less debt with this scenario, we've loaded up, but then it sort of smooths out. We're still at about the same with the cumulative rate increases that I saw from the first time we looked at alternative 2, which was about 61% cumulative to this 63. So it's down to, from what I see, what's the board's comfort level as to which alternative. I do think when we go out to the public with our last one, we go into depth again about the differences in terms of how each class actually affects the system, because the sheer numbers of the residential, it seems to me, affects it in greater strength than some of the rest of it. And that's what it looks like this study in terms of it has done. So those are my comments. It's now just a matter of which one of the well, there are 3 alternatives. The board feels comfortable with going with. So those are my observations. So I know it was a lot for everybody here. It was for us in terms of it, but again, with the final product, I think we need to just spell out in terms of the 3 different variables that are driving this in terms of the strength cost, the customer cost, the flow cost, just be explained a little more in the technical memo than perhaps that it's done here, as well as the customer classes again. So thank you for this. I appreciate it in terms of the product that we've got. Now we just have some tough decisions.
Yes, and we will make sure that the final report includes that information.
Yeah, it's like I said, the technical memo, like the CIP, which is one of our biggest drivers, it spelled out all the projects that we laid out in terms of it. And it's consistent with what I'm seeing now in the graphical. But when people get to read and see the projects that we're doing, I think it's a lot better for them to understand what we're trying to accomplish with these rate adjustments. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President. And with that, I'll move over to in the boardroom, Director Teague.
It's a lot to digest, no question about that. And this is something we've needed for many, many years, and I'm glad to see it come to fruition. Whichever alternative we select, it's going to have an impact either dramatically on the people from their perspective. And but if you look at the need, it's just vital to move forward. One of the things that appears to me and appears to me to be vital in all of this is that as we move forward, we get as much information out to the general public as we possibly can, as soon as we can. I just through my practice, I've learned that if I have to get some bad news to someone, I want to do it early on, so that by the time they have to experience it, and they've had a chance to kind of calm down. And so I think that we're really on the right track. And whichever alternative that the board selects, I'll work with. I personally, I kind of like the $1.5 per month increase to start, but I'll go along with the majority of the board.
Thank you, sir. No, well said. And then that's the thing is what we need to do is when we move on forward with this one, it's like Director Teague said, it's something that's well needed. We need to have this to move forward with a lot of the projects, and all the projects, benefit our ratepayers in return. And it's going to be one of those to where who, what, when, where, why, we need to really reach out. And I think if we do it the right way, and we do it with thought and consideration, reaching out to the residents is in the right way and early on is going to get our message across and exactly why we're doing this, and explain that the process of why we didn't do it is well for the past couple of years, but it's time. And I think all this, I commend the committee for and staff for really putting their time and effort and coming up with these. Greg, you did a great job on proposing these to us, and we have three great options. I'm leaning forward. I know which one I'm leaning forward, but we'll pass it over back to, I'd like to pass it over back to Greg and to see if there's anything he'd like to add and continue with this presentation.
Well, the role of the consultant is to do the analysis, and the decision makers is your body to make the tough decisions as to which ones balancing the pros and cons. And there isn't really a right or wrong answer. You'd think that the technical part of this would say exactly how you have to do everything, and it's X% fixed and X% volumetric, but that's a fairly flexible one. So including other, policy considerations about how the customer bill impacts turnout, and how quickly or how slowly you want to move into something you feel is more cost of service based. Those are the tough decisions that the board has to make.
Great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that moving forward, I thought there was more on this presentation, and there is not. I think I'm not missing anything, am I, Greg?
Well, there is a lot of the technical stuff that would be in the technical memo.
No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at this on my tablet, and it was frozen, so I kept trying to swipe, and it was just locked in that screen. So I assumed it was the last one. So I apologize.
Oh, okay. You want to look at any slides in particular?
No, I'm good. I'm going to bring it back to the board. I think, are we ready to make a motion on which step we want to take in this on the rate?
If I could just, in response to the board's concern or question about how this information is relayed to the public, I did want to point out that there is a draft of the notice to the public included in the packet. It's right in front of the presentation, which would be page, I believe, 13 of the whole packet. And this is very different than what we've done in the past. It's not just a postcard. It is a 4-page, almost like the newsletter. And the reason for that is because this is very, very different from the way the rates have been done in the past. Staff really wants to make sure that it's as understandable as possible. And we very clearly heard the board's input and feedback last year with regards to making the information available in Spanish, since such a large percentage of our population does speak Spanish at home, based on our demographics. And so the only way to do that is to make a larger document. And so it explains in both English and Spanish how the rates are determined, and also why we need to go through this rate increase. And I did include some photos of like the collection system work, the impact of wipes on the system, which we know drives operational costs, And then I included a picture of the influent pump station that we're currently working on, because it really does show some of the condition of our equipment to help explain some of the work, the CIP work that needs to be done. And so I just wanted to point that out in case the board had questions about that as well. And right now we had estimated, based on our past practice of having our public hearing on the first meeting in May, which would be May 11th, which would mean that the notices would need to go out sooner rather than later. So really, this is the meeting where we need to make a decision, or if we were going to postpone that decision, we would need to move the public hearing to a later date.
Any director have any comments on the letter?
Oh, and just to point out, I used the 80-20, the figures that you see there and the description. I had to pick one, so that I just picked that one.
No, it looks good, thank you. And I know we talked about it and being transparent and everything in English and Spanish. On my end, I think this looks great. Is there any other directors that have any questions about this?
Excuse me, Greg? Are you able to make me the host once again, please?
Show you the what?
Can you put me back the host, please?
Oh.
Then I can bring up that notice for everybody.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Stop sharing. There you go.
Okay, great. Let's give me a moment. Sorry about that. Okay, and so here we go. Here's the notice for you all.
Thank you, Holly.
You're welcome.
And I'm gonna ask any questions on the notice. This is definitely important for us to each go over. Vice President Coleman, any questions, comments on the notice?
No, the notice looks good. I want to know that if Best and Krieger has reviewed it, number one.
Yes, they did. And
Okay.
I went back and forth and I spoke with their Prop 218 person and made sure that the questions and concerns that he had were answered.
Okay,
And the
And that-
translation was reviewed by Hector.
okay. And Bob, how do you feel about the defensibility of the rate structure, looking at the looking by classifications with the mixture of fixed and volumetric?
I think any of the options are defensible. I don't, the law is written kind of in broad brushes. We can't collect more than we spend. We can't charge people more. And as long as, we take a reasonable approach to defining, what the levels of service are and the charges are, the courts really haven't got all that detailed about it. So I think, any of these proposals are defensible. It's more of a policy issue about how fine grained you want to get on it.
Okay, thank you. And Greg?
Yes, sir.
So this study from the classification shows that the flat rates that were done before, it was really masking costs, or it was slightly favoring the residential versus the other classifications when we went flat.
Yeah, this is an interesting part of the rate design, depending on how granular you get in breaking down the different types of customers. Sometimes we take commercial customers as a whole or break them down into individual types, multifamily versus single family. You can combine them in different ways, and what are assigned higher costs and lower costs. If you put those two together, it levels out for a larger group. So there's a lot of that could happen, and I really don't know much about the previous study and where the 330 per EDU came up with, but you know, it's almost like you put everybody into the same pot and you just kind of divide it as best you can by EDU. And I think we're seeing that the EDU data did need to be improved some. So this is
Yeah.
kind of what happens when you start pulling the, you know, the onion apart. Maybe we won't call it an onion. Maybe we'll call it an orange or something. I don't know. We're pull this thing apart. You get these different distributions by customer class.
Yeah, it's be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
Well, and if I could point out, one of the ways I've been through this before, where I worked at an agency that probably had a dozen different classifications, and it was just unnecessarily complex for the agency. It's very similar to here, where a very large percentage of the connections were residential. And so really what you end up doing is you define the size of the pie. In this case, it's about a $12 million pie. You know, how much money do you need in order to fund what you need to do? And then all you're doing is, how are you slicing it? And when you have such a large percentage of your connections are residential, it's very easy to accidentally subsidize some of the other categories by just sort of washing it and averaging it out, because you have such a large number of single family residential. In this particular case, the way it works out is very similarly, but you can really see the parity between mobile home RV parks and single and multifamily households and connections. I mean, it's if you look at from a demographic, where are your likelihood of people that might have a greater challenge in paying those rates? And they're probably in multifamily mobile home park type of circumstances, just looking at where they're located within our district. And when you look at, I'm just looking at the 80-20 as an example. If you're looking at the difference between the $330 sort of EDU rate right now, and then you look at a mobile home of $207 for fixed, and then some additional amount for volumetric, it's going to come out considerably lower than the 330, unless they're just running water and taking 30-minute showers every day. It's probably going to be coming out lower, excuse me, than the flat 330. So when you look at what's really fair, that's why doing it based on these classifications and also the volumetric, because it does put that volumetric within their own control. It gives them the ability of deciding, do they want to conserve to reduce that? But the fixed rate and the strength of it, when you look at things like fog and other issues, that those particular commercial businesses put the strain on our system, it's really also not fair that they're paying the same rate as a residential based on that 330, because it's apples and oranges in the types of impact on our system.
Yeah.
And that's really what this is what does it cost? Well, it costs different depending on the strength of that discharge.
Yes, and then it just brings us back to the comfort level between volumetric and fixed, because as you can see in the differences, the higher the volumetric, the lower the volumetric, the higher the residential, if I see this correctly. And so, but if you start going beyond the two options, it starts getting, at least to me, harder to justify a higher volumetric than what we're looking at between these two at the 70-30 or the 80-20, because I'm not sure in terms of the equity there, and as we're looking at this. So
Well, if you want to look, it's kind of hard when you have to flip between the different.
Mhm.
If you go to, Holly, if you could go to page 27 of the presentation, which I believe is 43 of the whole packet, that's where you can really see per classification type, you can see the 3 scenarios side by side. So, oh, you went too far. For 43. So go back about 5 or 6 slides.
I'm sorry, what page was it of the presentation?
27.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go. Oh, there you go. So the single family residential, you want to look at where it says winter average. And that's really looking at the different scenarios. So the gray is the current rate. The green is alternative 1. Alternative 2 is in blue and alternative 3 is in yellow. So for the single families, and this is based on an average water use, there's almost very little difference between the 3 alternatives on the single family. So you can see at that winter average, it's about $489, no matter which of the 3 options you choose. But when you start looking at comparing that to, say, a multifamily, and you see that same thing, it's relatively flat compared to whichever type, but look at the difference between what they're paying now. They're currently paying $330 and it would drop down to about $216, $217. And that's based on average water use. Same thing for mobile home, same thing in RV park. You know, everything for them is less than what's going on right now. And that's because of just applying it sort of in an equitable way based on use strength and all of, and everything of the impact for us. But then you really start to see the low and high strength commercial when you go to 31 and 32, what a huge difference that is. When you look at the annual average for a low medium strength commercial, currently at 330, and then you look at flat, and then you look at the volumetric. And that tells you the impact their volume is having on our system, which was in some ways masked or averaged out when you look at just a flat rate type approach.
Yeah.
And it shows that the true cost of treating their strength and their volume, that 330 is not capturing it.
Yeah. Yes, indeedy.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the other directors, if I may. I'm going to move on to Director Duran, please.
Thank you, President Sears. I agree with most of what the general manager is saying. At the present time, I'm leaning towards the 30 fixed, the 70-30. That seems to be the one that I sort of leaning wide, just for information purposes at the present time. But also on this send out and the mailers that we're going to send to the stakeholders, I would like to see something done in the media a little bit more, because there's a lot of individuals and they don't really read the material that's been sent out. So consequently, that would be something for the board to consider.
Agreed.
So, you know, when when the media gets hold of the fact that we are talking about ultimately the amount of money we're talking about, I think that we will have their attention, and we may have them attending the meetings themselves. So anything that we can do to get this information out to the general public, you know, to me is crucial to be successful and to move forward. I think that also included in the 218, and when that goes to them, if I can move on to that particular item, I would like to see some emphasis with respect to water reclamation. Thinking in terms of, we know there a drought's coming. We don't know when, but we know it's going to be there. And so one of the reasons why some of these costs are escalated to the point they are is as a result of us having to put in the water reclamation system and the treatment plant and the tertiary treatment plant, and it's extremely expensive. However, as a result of that, we probably let them know that we're going to try to capture between a fourth and a third of the volume that the city is pumping every day, and just put it back into the aquifer. So those are, I think, if we could get that kind of information to them, this is life saving, and so I think that would be key.
Agreed. Thank you. I don't want to forget Secretary Treasurer Canal. You're muted.
She's home.
There you go. I just like that extra attention.
You're just out there looking at your car. That's what you're doing.
No. I'm actually looking at my laptop so I can move it up and down. But page 14 of 76. I'm looking at what's going to be sent out, and that's all in English, and that's all together. And I see it finishes up on the very top of page 15. Well, then we do the Spanish part, and then it continues up on top. Then we got why the rent increase. And then to the right, I see, that it's in Spanish, but I'm just saying the eye doesn't follow. Do you see how the Spanish is broken up and then brought all the way to the top? Maybe put a picture up there, or I don't know, something that shows it is connected. I mean, that's just
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, because then you go to the next page, and then the next page is side by side. And I see what you were doing, but on that middle page, it just doesn't do it for me, but that's me personally.
Okay. I mean, that's certainly something that, we can modify with not a lot of effort. So yeah.
Yeah. And then just diddle what they're saying is however we can start getting the information out to the public, Facebook. I know that people may not respond to it, but I mean, something, any which way, the media, any which way, but that way, yeah, there's no surprises, and we've got everybody walking through this together. Mm-hmm. That's what I have.
No, thank you so much. No, and I agree with you guys getting this out there. Beverly and I had a great conversation regarding tactics on media, marketing, exposure. I'm really looking forward to lending whatever knowledge I have and helping get us out there. I think there's some simple, easy ways to take it into the next step that really targets every demographic, and whether it is reaching out and just doing something, whether it's on some media platforms, English and Spanish, and in the social media. I think it's definitely something that needs to be done, and take the right steps to make that happen. I do agree with Secretary Treasurer Canero on the way that the letter is formatted. And just because on page number 2, it kind of flips to 100% English. And, I don't want anyone to feel like it's, the first page is Spanish 50-50 and then just, oh, it's all English and then throw it away. Just take out any variables when it comes to our Spanish speaking community, and just every page, I think a 50-50 split would be the best way to do that. And yeah, even if it comes out to even more pages, I mean, we can't take anything away from this. So I think we're all on the page. I think the next step for us guys is going to decide which scenario we want to go with. So with that being said, I think that's step 1 before we find out going to the next thing on to set the public hearing date. So is everyone okay with the 3 options we do have? And does anyone want to make a motion to move forward with any of the options?
President Sears,
Yes, Director Duran, go for it.
2 things. I got contacted today by a gentleman by the name of Marcos, Palma. He has a
Yes, sir.
TV program and he wants to have an audience or a Zoom meeting with you or with the general manager. It's already as convenience. And another one, alternative 3 would be something that I'm leaning for, the 70-30 fixed.
Perfect. No, thank you. And I think reaching out to him and he's great. I love his show, and he does have a really good following in the Spanish community, so that's a must. And yeah, if you do speak with him before we do, please send him our information, and we'll move forward on that one. But if you do speak with him before us, you'll let him know we really do appreciate him looking into this because it's valuable for us more than he knows. So I have Director Rand going for the option number 3. I was kind of leaning, I don't know, I was leaning for option number 2 myself, but on the fence, very close with option number 3. What about the other directors?
Can I make a motion?
Yes, go for it. That'd help us out.
I make a motion for alternative number 3, the 70-30.
I'll
I have a
second it.
motion. I have a second. Roll call, please. Roll call, please.
Sorry about that. Director Teague?
Aye.
Secretary Canaro?
Aye.
Vice President Coleman?
Aye.
Director Duran?
Aye.
And President Sear?
Aye. All right, motion passes.
Can I make a suggestion
Yes, please do so, sir.
in terms of how we go to the press? I think it would be good for us to put together a story, even if it's on PowerPoint, to go more into the storytelling as well as the technical and sort of work this out. Because like I said, we have a lot of information, but in this presentation, of course, it's all numbers and stuff like that. To whereas when you started with the first technical memo, we actually talked about our needs, our operational needs, our capital improvement needs, and how capital improvement is driving it and why we have the needs for capital improvement to put the story behind probably to put the story in front of the numbers. And so when we can get that, I think it's time to go out and, make the presentations and take the requests in. Because that's going to be an awful lot on you, Scott, or whoever goes out there to talk about it in terms of it. Because if we were just to give this same presentation or the gentleman watched this presentation without the background that's gone into the iterations and everything, it might be really confusing and overwhelming. So.
No, and I totally agree. And if I could add on to that, I think going out to all the outlets, putting out this press release to everyone we can is going to be much more direct and less of a you are trying to hide something from us. So if we hit every outlet we can, every news organization that we are doing a rate increase, and the reasons why we're doing the rate increases, it's going to show that we have absolutely zero to hide, that our phone lines are open, our GM's available, I'm available, and that I think it's going to take the less of the sting with the media because we're trying to push it on them. We're trying to give it to them. But when it looks like we're trying to withhold something, then that can start the little forest fire,
Well, actually, you can invite the media to come here and put a PowerPoint program together for them right here. They would have all the experts here to be able to respond to it and help simplify matters.
Exactly. No, I think that's a great idea. And just doing that is just going to be okay. We're not trying to hide everything. Everything's laid out in front of you. You have all the questions. Let's do it. And then when it comes down about someone, there's really no negative when we're trying to hide zero. And this benefits everyone. So I'm loving it. So Beverly, you think you can put together a press release and then we'll talk about moving forward about other options?
Yes, and actually I had planned on reaching out to the city of Indio to see if there was an interest on their part of us doing any sort of discussion or presentation at one of their city council meetings.
That'd be great. Awesome. No, thank you guys. I think this is great. I think this is long overdue. And no, great job, Greg. Great job on the presentation as well. Thank you so much.
President Chair,
Yes, sir.
may I recommend also that if any of the directors or if staff feels that they can utilize us since we are in wards, well, we can also make a presentation on in a PowerPoint.
That's actually something I was going to address, get to you guys, because we do need to work with awards. And since we're all in awards, we all represent our individual communities and areas. Yeah, I think that's going to be key, you know, and moving in the future, us going to something simple as, you know, grand openings and ribbon cuttings is going to be key. So no, I agree, you know, great idea. All right, guys, so we're going to move into item number 4.2, which kind of complements this one, is going to set a public hearing date to consider and adopt sewer youth rate for May 11th, 2021. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our general manager.
So you have it in front of you. We are required to publish the notice, and the board is required to actually officially set the hearing date. And as I stated before, the past practice has been the first meeting in May, so that if for some reason the board needs to consider something else, there's still time before the rates are due to the county and the budget is ready to be adopted. So right now we're looking at May 11th. But then once again, that's up to the board as far as what do you want to, what is the date you want to use?
I'm going to go over the board to ask if there's any questions on why we wouldn't just go run forward with a date right now. You guys need to educate me on this one. I'm going to start with Director Duran on the line.
Okay, what was it that you needed educated on, Sen? You're pretty well versed.
No, no, it was just right now we could actually set the date for May 11th for the public hearing. But if there's any reason why we wouldn't, our GM stated that usually we do this the first of next month. We have the chance to wait. I'm okay with moving for May 11th, but is there any reason why we should wait with announcing this? I'm ready to hit the streets running with it, but I wanted to see where you guys did, or if there's a reason why we should wait till the beginning of next month.
May 11th is fine with me.
Thank you, sir. I'll pass it to Vice President Coleman.
Okay, asking our GM, May 11th means we've got to mail around when? Is that April 10th? We have to get stuff out?
We basically have to mail it immediately. So that's March 27th is 45 days prior to the hearing. So it has to be 45 days prior to that. And we would do the public notice in the newspaper as well prior to the March 27th, so that we can get it out within that 45 days.
Given
prior
that,
to the 45 days.
Given that, are we ready, given how we have to revise the draft and everything else?
Oh, that's not a problem.
But that's not a problem?
That is not a problem.
Okay, then. Yeah, because, yeah, it's very important we get this thing out. And I know you have a number of changes to that letter. And if you've got enough time and you can comfortably do it, yeah. If not, 14 days after May 11th is not going to, the 25th wouldn't kill us either in May, unless there's something logistically you need in terms of getting this in the budget. But if staff is fine and staff has the breathing room and we can get this thing done with including the final review by the attorney, May 11th is fine.
Perfect. Secretary Treasurer Canaro.
Yeah, I'm okay with May 11th, as long as we, get things out as soon as possible. And I think by May 11th, we should be able to answer quite a few questions, and people who are just out there and see us out in the streets, maybe we can give them answers too and make them feel a little more comfortable and educated on why we're moving forward on this. So I think May 11th is a good day to have the public hearing.
Perfect. Director Teague.
I move approval for the date of May 11th.
I second.
Motion. I have a second. Roll call, please.
Vice President Coleman,
Aye.
Director Duran,
Aye.
Secretary Canaro,
Aye.
Director Teague,
Aye.
President Sear.
Aye. All right, looks like May 11th is the date, guys. All right, we're going to move on to item number 5, which is the general manager items. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our general manager.
You have the item in front of you. I am happy to go into any level of detail that you would like on the report. And then I have a follow-up item from the last meeting after I answer any questions on the monthly report.
Perfect. I'll start with Secretary Treasurer Canaro.
No comment. Everything is there, and thank you for keeping us fully informed.
Thank you. Vice President Coleman.
Everything looks good. The NPDES is still over my head, so I'm gonna have to get some lessons how to read it at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Duran.
Thank you, President Sear. No comments. Everything is great. Thank you for a job well done.
Thank you, sir. Director Teague.
What is the status of the influent pump station? Have they had an opportunity to be able to get it corrected, repaired, or what is the status of that?
Ron, are you still there? You are.
The bypass is done. Everything was a success. They were able to get inside the pump station and really get a good look at what status of what was there. The walls of the pump station, the lining on there, the T-lock lining was in very good shape for the most part. The only issues were where there were intrusions into the pump stations, any pipe openings. It seemed like that's where it kind of peeled away. The slide gates, except for the major one that was in bad disrepair, we already knew about, but the other slide gates for each of the pumps were in real good shape. The installation of those gates were a little bit of a weird scenario. They actually pulled those gates frames away from the walls and then tried grouting them in, and that grout, the grout is the HOS gas just ate up all that grout. So we'll have to figure out how to fix that. The worst of it probably is each of the discharge pipes on each pump, cast iron or a ductile iron pipe, and they had a coating on it, and the coating faded away. That's probably one of the first things that we noticed, that we better maybe take a look at this pump station. Well, the coating is all the way, and now the ductile iron is starting to get eaten away. So we know we're going to have to replace those discharge pipes as part of this project. We believe the lining will be good enough. We'll just have to make repairs. I believe the recommendation is going to be to keep the slide gates the way they are and just kind of fix the grouting behind them. And then we have to get the new slide gate for the main part of the forebay. But long story short, I'm still waiting for the report. I'm hoping to get that either this week or probably this week or maybe first part of next week. And then from there, we start our design process. I mean, we got to really hammer out what makes sense to do, what repairs need to be done. And then we get to a basis of design report. And then from there, we get to a more of a complete design, a 60% design. And that's where they do the final guaranteed maximum price. That's probably expected to be done maybe in the next 4 to 5 months, hopefully sooner. And then we can bring the cost of that repair back to the board for approval and award, and then we can start on that process of making the repairs. So we're in a design holding pattern at this point. It's going to be a few months for sure before we will be able to bring a cost back to you guys. But as for the bypass, it went really well. So I apologize for the long story, but I was very excited. I thank everyone involved, our staff and the contractors for the awesome bypass and the way it went through. It did what we needed, and we didn't have any hiccups.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we thought the bypass was smaller than we expected because Bill and I took a golf cart out there and didn't see anything. So we're like, either it's gone or it's super tiny.
It's gone.
So,
it's gone.
it's gone. So thank you so much. Okay, no, and then for me, everything looks good. And I'll pass it back to our general manager.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to come back around to a question that had come up at the previous board meeting with regards to assistance that was provided for the SRF the last time around for the RECWA project. The district actually hired someone specifically to assist with that. So while it was a staff person, that staff person was hired specifically to deal with that project and specifically the SRF application. And the cost that the district incurred during that time period for that assistance was approximately the same amount of money as the contract with ESS.
All right, thank you for getting back to us. I appreciate that. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the committee report, and I'll pass it over to our general manager.
We did have a committee meeting, and you have the draft minutes, and I will turn that over to the committee members for their interpretation or impression of the meeting.
Our chair for the meeting, Vice President Coleman, take it away.
Let me take it away. Okay. One of the things that we had asked staff at the January Budget and Finance Committee for a future item was to take a look at our investments with Lathe and CalTrust that we have in terms of it, and take a look at some possibilities in terms of perhaps looking at a consultant to help us, an investment advisor and manager to help us. So at this meeting, we took a look at, staff brought us back the current investment policy that took a look at things as it was, and they were going to bring it back in August. And we went over some changes, staff suggested changes that we thought were good. We asked to take a look at it and put something in about if we go to a money manager, which a lot of cities and entities are using. The one thing we did was we had a frank discussion about where we are with respect to the market. Once the COVID hit and the feds went to next to nothing to borrow money, it just brought our investments down, the rate of return on our investments down, not unlike what happened in 2008 after the financial crashes. So our investments are based on Lathe and others, but the Lathe has a duration, or the investments only go out maybe 9-10 months. And because of that, it's a shorter duration, giving us shorter bits of interest in terms of it. So we discussed a number of things to bring back, including looking at somebody, if we want to just take baby steps of getting a broker helping us look at CDs and laddering them to a full-blown an investment advisor, which the value of the investment advisor is, the values are, they're constantly looking at that, and they manage portfolios for people, and they'll sit and take the time to discuss components of our portfolio, because the government code not only tells us what we can invest in, what's allowable, and we've adopted, but it also tells us how much of each that we can have. So it's a very, very specific type of skill you're looking at. And then you have to have access to the market to know what's out there to purchase. So we've asked them to take a look at some point, not anytime soon as we bought up, because we've got the rate study that we're still full blown in. And we also have the budget coming up. So they'll get back to us in terms of potential investment firms and stuff like that, and looking at the investment policy. The other thing they brought up was both Beverly and Jeanette. Jeanette brought up that she is going to revise the budget. We're looking forward to it. Right now, she's in the process, and I believe it's listed in the administrative items of the general manager in terms of how she is putting together the request from the various department heads with their inputs. But from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeanette, we're also going to include the metrics of why we're doing things and the justification, which will just kind of flow from the way that the mid-year budget was presented to us, with the information in a way that's digestible to all of us. So that's pretty much my recollections of what happened. I mean, President Sear, if you want to chime in, and then after that, have our general manager and our business services manager chime in as well.
Yeah, you nailed it right on the head. I mean, everything was great, and just looking forward to that, going back with the investments, and I mean, it's just, we want to be forward thinking, so it's nothing we want to do right now in the mix of everything going around. But I just think constantly looking for the future is going to benefit us in the long run. And I'll pass it over to we'll give our GM and Jeanette a chance to chime in as well. So Beverly.
I will go ahead and turn this over to Jeanette, since this was her meeting to staff.
Thank you, Beverly. So yes, when we discussed several items, just looking at our investment policies, which we do have to bring back to the full board in August for review. But this was just a time for us to be able to just see, what changes we would like to make, where the district would like to see us going, and what we think we need to start thinking about in terms of these investments, especially as the economy and looking at the projections and forecasts of these, people who have $1 million systems and who do this all day and have their crystal balls. And what we are seeing is that the projections are showing that we think that the economy is set to start recovering more in a kind of U shape than the V shape that they originally intended. And so the investments are set to come back at the end of fiscal year 2023. And so that gives us plenty of time to start looking, as Director Coleman said, for either a firm that could either manage our portfolio, or if we want to start looking into that laddering. And so we were tasked with looking at the cities and the way that they do things and where their investments are going. So that was a big topic of discussion. The second, as Director Coleman also mentioned, is the budget presentation this year is going to be a little bit different, just because we are changing the book. It is still going to have all of the GLs, all of the comparisons, but it will be a little bit easier to follow, as well as you will have printed books for when we have the actual meeting that you will be able to, we could either deliver to you or you'd be able to pick up. So that way, when you have any questions, you'd actually be able to go through it. But we will also have a high level PowerPoint presentation where it will make it clear where all the changes are, where it is that we're going, what the economic outlooks are, and what the budgeting process was like. So I'm very excited about that. Our team is working really, really hard on that right as we speak. But I think that you will be very happy with the results. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Beverly, did you want to add anything to that?
No, sorry, I couldn't get it to unmute. No, actually, I think that pretty much covers the whole discussion.
No, that's perfect. Any of our directors have any questions? Director Duran?
No questions at the time.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Treasurer Canaro? You're muted.
There you go. See, I told you I like the attention here. Now, I just want to thank you guys for sitting on that committee and narrowing things down for us and getting us ready for what's forthcoming. So thank you for taking that extra time.
More than welcome. Director Teague?
I don't have any questions. No, I appreciate the presentation. It's nice to have Beverly and staff and this wonderful guy, Mr. Dennis, with his background in finance to be able to put this together. My only question, I guess maybe I do have one, is that I know that it's very limited in what the district can invest their money in. So I suspect that it's almost imperative if you really want to be successful that you have to have the experts to assist you in your investments. So I thank them for their effort, and they can do more. That's it.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, cool. Thank you so much, Dennis, Beverly, Jeanette. Amazing job. Thank you. We're
And
gonna
you,
move
Scott,
on. Oh, thank you. I
you're part of
appreciate
the, no, it was a great discussion amongst all of us.
It
And
is. You know,
just to let the board know, there'll be more discussions about this because a lot will have to do with tolerances of the board with respect to investments. And that'll pertain to the duration of looking at things. So more discussions to come, and thank you to staff again. You know, all of the finance and admin staff, as well as our GM, who continue to juggle many balls and do it with such excellent grace. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
perfect. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item number 7, which is director's items. Any directors have anything to bring up? Director, Vice President Coleman?
Just wanted to thank staff and the rest of the board for another great and productive meeting. I know we've had a lot of tough choices and some growing pains, but they seem to be paying off, and just thanks everybody for the patience, plus dealing with an overwhelming amount of information. It's not easy, and I just want to commend the board as well as staff for being patient with us and starting to get the information, you know, or continuing to get us information in a way that we can start digesting it and making the decisions we're here to make. So thank you all.
Agreed. Director Duran?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Treasurer Canaro?
No comment.
Thank you, ma'am. Director Teague?
Yes, I'm curious as to the status of people with their vaccinations. Where does everybody stand? Have you been vaccinated? Have you had your second one yet? The board members.
I got I'm sorry.
Oh, for once I'm unmuted. I'm sorry, Dennis.
No, go ahead, please.
I was able to get my first one about 2 weeks ago because somebody did not show up for their appointment. Because I'm still not within that age, but they were taking in people who just signed up that really wanted it. So I got my first one.
Good for you. I know, Dennis, you're on yours, right?
I got my first one. I'm waiting to get my second. I kind of blew an opportunity to go through Kaiser if I go through Kaiser for the second one, I'm pushed beyond my 42 days. So I'm having faith that through the county, but it's like waking up in a tight real estate market where you're checking the market the first thing in the morning to see what's available to put your offer in with regard to the second through the county, but I'm gonna get my second one within the
Good.
42 days.
Good. And then Duran, you got one, right?
I got my second shot yesterday.
Oh,
So
good
Oh,
for you, Mike.
awesome.
Good for you.
Congratulations. And then Teague, you're getting ready for your second, correct?
I will get my second one on Friday. So that if Monday would be next Monday would be 42 days for me. So I'm just on the deadline.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, and then myself, I was actually lucky enough. I put myself on a list. They called me and said there was an availability to get the shot. The one thing I wanted to do is stress to them that there was no one above me that was in an older age bracket or needed it or medical or anything. They said, no, it's here it is. And so I ended up taking it. I got my first shot on Monday, I believe. And so far so good. So 4 weeks I'll be able to grab my my next one, but you know, it seems like everything's kind of getting on track and everything's good. But and Beverly, where do you stand on it?
Unfortunately, I do not meet any of the criteria, nor does staff at this time, other than staff who might be within one of those risk factors. And they have not modified the tiers to recognize water and wastewater as an essential service.
No, it's
Well, that's too bad. I would have thought they would have done that. That's too bad.
yeah.
Beverly,
Yes.
just for your information, I talked to a plumber who does a lot of work out in the valley, and like you said, they're essential workers. And he says he and his crew got shots through at the Coachella Old Catholic Church. They recognized them as essential workers and gave them their vaccinations, just for your information.
Yeah, it's a case-by-case basis. I know the city of Riverside was in the newspaper because they identified a bunch of staff as being emergency workers. And they were able to get city staff who are not police and fire or health vaccinated. Unfortunately, in contacting the Riverside County, you have to go through individual providers, and it's kind of difficult to know who does and who doesn't. But certainly, I've encouraged my staff to, if they're like with Kaiser or Eisenhower or any of the private medical facilities, to reach out and contact, as well as register with myturn.ca.gov, which is the one that the state's doing. So that if an availability comes up, you know, they're on as many lists as possible.
Good idea. No, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it looks like we're all headed in the right direction. And then also we're going to move on to item number 8, which is the informational items. Do we have everything on list? I'll pass to our general manager.
The only thing I wanted to mention is that we will be having a special meeting on the 16th for the Ops Committee. And we will be talking about the succession plan, and the agenda will be going out by the end of the week for that.
Great.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, and with that, we came to item number 9, which is the adjournment. I want to thank everyone. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion. Make a motion.
Have a second.
Well, if you were unmuted, I'll tell you for sure.
All right, I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, it took a long for a second. Motion and second, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. You guys stay safe out there. Enjoy your day, and just enjoy your time.
See you all.
Everyone take care.